Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Ben Snyder.
And I am Rachel Sheldon, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and people curious about living a life free of supernatural beliefs.
Mm-hmm. This is a call-in show, however we only have one phone line, so if you can't get through, we invite you to email us your comments or questions to us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com, or you can tweet your questions to at FFTVKnox.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee monthly events are on the first and third Sunday mornings and are usually lectures with lively round-table discussion. The second Sunday is a book club. The fourth Sunday is a reflections gathering, which is a potluck afternoon gathering at a member's home.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun meetup, often at a bar or restaurant. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's Taproom and Pizzeria for happy hour tonight after the show for food, drink, and conversation. And Friday we will meet for happy hour at the Field House atop Bearden Hill. To find us at either of these places, just look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table.
Today is July 31st, 2012, and we'll be talking about the "they wouldn't die for a lie" fallacy in Christianity, but first in the news.
Mm-hmm. Several interesting things have been happening in the news. Rachel, would you like to start?
Sure. An update on the fake church kidnapping case. There was a Pennsylvania youth pastor who was charged with false imprisonment and simple assault for staging an event in March. The youth group had a group of teenagers, several that didn't belong to the church, have a get-together and kidnapped them and covered the children's heads, put them in a van and interrogated them. And one person involved even wielded a semi-automatic rifle. Neither the kids nor the parents were told beforehand it wasn't real. And the pastor of the church defends the event, saying that they've actually done that before and had no complaints, and said that the event was to prepare the youth to be missionaries in different countries. I suppose as opposed to what happens to Muslims here sometimes.
It's interesting because they want to give these children, or at least young people, the experience of being oppressed in another nation. I find that very disturbing. I would think that's something you wouldn't want them to experience. I can understand wanting them to empathize, perhaps, and even to respect what some people go through, to do what they do. I think it's really, really unhealthy to do that sort of thing.
Yes. One mother reported the event to the police and said that her child was traumatized. Mm-hmm. And I think the big deal here is that the parents didn't give consent to it.
Right. I don't know if it came across in what Rachel read and was anything else we've said so far, but this was not something that was announced before they did it. They didn't warn people about this. The kids were not aware this was going to happen, that it was fake, anything. And and to do that not only to members of your church, but also do that to people who are just visiting. I mean, that's really frightening, and I think that's a good way to keep people from wanting to return to your church.
Oh, definitely.
So, also in the news, the Reverend Billy Graham recently wrote a prayer letter to America expressing his dismay at America's moral stances. He opens his letter reflecting upon a memory of his deceased wife, Ruth, who was reading out of one of his books where he is describing what he considers to be the moral decline of America. Read a quote from that. When she, Ruth, finished a section describing the terrible downward spiral of our nation's moral standards and the idolatry of worshiping false gods, such as technology and sex, she startled me by exclaiming, "If God doesn't punish America, he'll have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah." And Graham goes on in the article to cite the grievances that she'd been reading about, and he continues to believe are problems. He cites abortion, pride, self-indulgence, lack of shame over sin, and the shrinking space for prayer in the public sphere. And it's this last one that he seems to do the most, talking about. One more quote from his letter. "Just a few weeks ago in a prominent city in the South, Christian chaplains who serve the police department were ordered to no longer mention the name of Jesus in prayer. It was reported that during a recent police-sponsored event, the only person allowed to pray was someone who addressed the being in the room. Similar scenarios are now commonplace in towns across America. Our society strives to avoid any possibility of offending anyone except God." And I found this letter, I've read the whole thing, to be quite ludicrous, just in the sort of things he's complaining over. Prayer. He complains about prayer being diminished in public sphere, but the thing is that we live in a secular nation, which it acknowledges the fact that there are many different kinds of people who live in this nation, and the police are part of our government, our governing structures, and should not be tied to one group or another, I would think. What do you think?
I agree, and also I was a little surprised at how forceful the letter was compared to a lot of what Billy Graham said, because he's usually kinder and gentler than, say, Jerry Falwell in what he says.
Right. And he also said in his letter that he feels that America is just getting worse and worse, even from the time his wife said that when she was reading his book. I find it funny that he thinks that we worship technology and sex. I don't know what Christians consider to be worship, but last I checked, their worship services don't look like anything like what we do to sex or technology. Just found it really funny. And he ended his prayer asking for money. He said prayers would be nice too, but especially money. So.
Because his group doesn't have enough money to do everything they want to do.
Yeah.
Oh. And Jack Rue, who attends Westboro Baptist Church, the infamous church in Topeka, Kansas, is running for the Board of Education in the 4th District against Democratic incumbent Carolyn Campbell. He wants to entirely remove evolution from schools. Of course, people who go to Westboro Baptist Church think the earth is only 6,000 years old. But this is, even though it's a small local thing, it's actually quite important, because Kansas is currently drafting new science standards as part of a nationwide effort for standardized guidelines for the entire country. And another school member told the AP last month that the standards are very problematic for describing evolution as a fact.
Well, we have a call. Hello, caller? Hello, caller.
Yes. Hey.
Hi. Can we get a name or nickname?
My name is Ed.
Ed?
I was just calling.
Okay.
And it's really a puzzling thing to me. What you are, right?
Sorry, could you say that again?
What you are, right? Atheist. What based on? Why do you believe the way you believe?
Why do we believe the way we believe?
Right.
Okay. Well, so you're specifically asking about us being, why do we believe in atheism?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to try?
Well, I don't know. I would just describe atheism as the lack of belief. I mean, it's just, personally, I tried for a long time. I thought something was wrong with me because I never heard God calling me. I grew up in church. I prayed for God to save me, and you know what? I never got a response. And after years of trying and thinking something was wrong with me, and going to different churches, I finally, figured out that maybe it's not the church or me. It's just that maybe it's not out there.
But here's my comment. I respect if that's the way you choose to believe. But there's no more scientific data, intellectual information, or anything that would base your theory than there is that bases Christianity. And millions and millions of people in undocumented history, myself, have I ever seen Jesus? No.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is there something I'm missing on your side of the thing?
Oh.
Because and that's what I tell people. You take a child, if it's raised as a Muslim,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to believe everything it's told about being a Muslim.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you take a child that's raised in a Catholic environment,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to tend to believe what they're told.
Yes.
And my logic in this is children, we're the only thing that's born on this planet that does not know its destiny. We are the only thing that is born that has a free will to choose.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm not sure how you can say we're the only creatures on this earth that do not know its destiny. I'm fairly certain a lot of creatures don't know what their destiny is.
Well, here's what I'm into that. I'm not saying their destiny as far as what life is going to hand them. I'm saying this.
Mm-hmm.
The squirrel, if you watch nature and you see a squirrel knows it's got to climb trees, and it's got to salvage nuts, and it's got to prepare for winter. And each species is trained in their mind, in their intellectual, when their being is in place. They know their purpose, is what I'm saying. Not that a human has a right to make decisions and choices.
Well, but other animals make decisions and choices. I'd say the difference between us and the squirrel is largely just as a result of how we've evolved over time, where we have come up with better technologies. Our brain size and function is very different from that of a squirrel. But we are able to figure things out in different ways, and we have provided a bunch of options that we can choose from.
I respect that. Now, let's get back to this. Where do you think the human origin came from? Do you think that we were born in where we're at today, in our physical, mental, and state, that we are born as a human, or do you believe in evolution?
I don't understand the first.
I think I know what he's saying.
Well, basically what I'm asking, do you think that as a prehistoric being or something, that we have evolved from an ape or any other issue other than being a human being?
Yes, I believe so. I believe all life on the planet, it has it comes from a single common ancestor, and over 4 billion years, we've managed to, things have happened so that, we went from being, like, say, a protozoa, or, just a single tiny cell into, becoming all these different creatures. And that's where all the evidence leads, all these fossils.
I would also point out, I wouldn't, just to correct something you said that she agreed with, but I don't think she meant to agree with necessarily. I wouldn't say we evolved from apes. We are still categorized as a form of ape.
Yes, sorry if I didn't make that clear.
I'm just asking a question. I'm not mad at nobody.
Okay.
When the Bible says that God created man, you don't think that God created man eons ago in the same format that we're known as today?
I'd say that's definitely not the case. I'd say, I think, what you just said, I don't believe that.
So where did we come from? In respect to your atheism, where did we come from? A one-cell being that has evolved up to where we're at now?
I don't know if it was one cell or many cells that came. You're talking about abiogenesis, where non-living materials undergo chemical processes, which then lead into living organisms. And then you have evolution, where based on where those expand to, like what climate they live in and such, what survives, what doesn't, what traits carry on, what don't. And that's where you get into speciation, is where they start being separated from one another and developing differently under different climates.
Well, let me ask you this. Were either one of you all raised in a biblical home?
Yes.
Both of us,
definitely.
Yes. Very much so. I used to believe Christianity. I used to believe it. And as she said before, she tried to believe it and could not.
It wasn't for lack of trying, believe me. I tried, it gave me a
Well,
lot of...
can I ask a person, what is your difficulty in believing it?
Well, it's just like,
And I understand it. I mean, I really do. I'm not being mad, but you can see certain things in life, and there's a lot of things that you don't see. Mm-hmm. And you can go out here, and technology is amazing now. And would you both agree that there's thousands of things going through the air that we can't see? Yeah. Cell phone, see, every time it's that communication. We can't see it, but it's that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think she was going to answer your former question. You had asked, what keeps us from believing it?
Well, for me, it's hard for me to believe anything without proof. I mean, I believe there's, radio waves going through the air, but but I know that but I can prove this by going to a radio station, seeing how that's going on, and then I can go home and listen to a car radio or something, and there's the proof.
Mm-hmm. Are you skeptical in any other section of your life? I mean, are you, if you're total non-believer in Christianity, mm-hmm. do you have any? I mean, is there any other things that in your mind that is really not scientific provable to you? I mean,
Well,
you cannot. Mm-hmm. It's just like faith. An explanation of faith is this. If you go in and you sit down, you go in and flop down in your recliner this afternoon. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A simple act of faith is that your back next recliner is going to hold you, not down on the floor.
Well,
you have enough faith in that recliner to hold you.
No, actually, I disagree. The reason why I could go home and sit down in a recliner and trust that specific recliner to hold me up is because I've sat in that recliner many times before. And also, there's another thing, is that I've seen people sit in chairs that fall apart. So I know in the back of my mind, even if it's I know in the back of my mind it can happen. And, and when I go home with that recliner, I've sat in that recliner so many times, and it's held me up so many times, that the odds of it holding me up in my mind are greater, much greater than the odds that it could fall apart. Now, could it fall apart? It could.
Is that magic word in your mind?
Well, yes.
To say that's what I'm saying. But I'm going to disagree with you. That's a personal choice. But I have absolutely no problem in believing what I believe.
Okay.
And, if you choose not to do that, and the only reason I'm asking that mm-hmm. is not trying to beat up on anybody, but, mm-hmm. I try to understand everybody's viewpoint. I don't put them down for it.
That's good.
That's just, if we're all the same, they just make one type of car and one design a house. And that's a simple explanation of it. Mm-hmm. And like I say, everybody's entitled to what they believe and how they believe it. Mm-hmm. And I was just curious. I mean, I have never talked to anybody that, is a practicing atheist, in depth to anything. I probably would be enlightened by some things that, and I'm not disagreeing with what you choose to, believe in your mind or anything else. Mm-hmm. But, and I noticed one thing about you. You're not dogmatic, in your belief. You respect other people's, too. So that's a good thing I've watched your program time too.
Thank you.
But, I don't know That's not my no, that's not my sport. That's not my purpose.
Well,
You know, I was just curious. Got a little early today, and I started talking to you guys.
I appreciate you calling in. Want to extend an invitation. If you would like, you're more than welcome to come visit us at the meetups. I don't know if you tuned in early enough to hear about them, but for example, this evening, from about the middle of the show, 5:30 and on till about 9, 10 o'clock at Barley's and Tap Room and Pizzeria. You don't have to drink if you come. I don't know if you drink or not, but you're more than welcome to come and talk and hang out with us.
You know, how is your? Let's just pull something out of the air like abortion.
Sure.
What is your opinion? You know, and I'm not trying to put you in a corner no more, but what is your belief on that?
I'll let you start.
Well, I think I really don't have any right to tell somebody or tell another woman what to do with her body. I mean, she might have reasons to have an abortion that I don't know about. Maybe she has Huntington's disease and doesn't want to continue that, or there's a lot of good reasons to have an abortion, and I think, sure, whatever's in her uterus has the potential to be a human being, but I don't think that, just a little tiny clump of cells is a human being. I mean, I'm okay with people
you don't believe that life consent?
Well, I didn't say that. I think it is it's alive. I just don't think I can tell somebody else what to do with their body. As long as they're not, hurting something that can talk back to them.
Well, and that's what makes us a great country. Everybody can have their own opinion about it. Guys, I appreciate it. I'll see you again.
Thank you, Ed. Please call in again.
And, one thing I forgot to say while he was on the phone is, I just forgot it again.
It's all right. Okay, we received a tweet, it seems, that says approximately 7 million years ago, humans and chimps had a common ancestor. So that's how far back you'd have to go to find the common ancestor between our species and chimpanzees.
Which, really isn't that many generations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and something I didn't get to say, I actually wanted to kind of hit on this when you were talking about abortion, but Ed had to go. Says life does not equal a person, and that's an important point. The cells may be alive at conception, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it deserves the same level of protection or rights as a child that is, outside the womb forming. There's important distinctions to be made along the progress of the growth of those cells.
And I remember what I was going to say. I think, abortion's there for a purpose. It's not like I'm saying, yay, everybody go out and have an abortion. I think it's just sort of it's a necessary evil, I guess you could say.
Right. We have another call. Hello? Oh. Caller, you're welcome to try again. If for some reason we lost you there. Sorry about that. Okay. Hello, caller?
Again.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Could we get a name or nickname?
My name is Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, hello.
Yes, I think I missed the part of the show where it describes would Christians die for a lie?
Yes, that's the subject we're going to be getting to. Is that what you would like to talk about?
Yes, I want to know your answer for that. Like, how would you describe this question?
Okay. So you're wanting to know what we think that the argument is and why we don't accept it?
Right.
Okay. Do you want to start on that, or do you?
Well, I don't think a lot of Christians would willingly, knowingly die for a lie, but I think part of the reason some people who say they believe it might is They want to die with dignity, or they don't want to, or they have pressured. They've been pressured, so they have to stand up for something.
The argument, from what I understand of it, the goal, like essentially the strength within it for Christians is that, here are these people who, and it depends on who it's applied to. Usually it's strongest when it's applied to the 12 apostles or Paul, or even Jesus in some cases, and they say these people went to their deaths, and if it didn't happen, then they had to have known it didn't happen, and so they would have died knowing it's a lie for that lie. And the challenge then for atheists or anyone else who doesn't believe Christianity, is to say, well, then is to explain why they would have died for that.
Well, what are you saying the lie is?
What do I think the lie is?
Yeah, you're thinking that they're going to die, that as Christians, we're going to die for a lie.
Oh.
What is the lie?
Well, I'm not personally convinced that the terminology applies to Christianity, that to call it a lie necessarily. When looking at the Bible, the biblical text, there's a lot of question about what genre the text is written in. So we don't know if it's meant, and we don't even know who wrote most of the text. So we don't know exactly what their intent was in all cases. We don't know who was writing it. In some cases, we know there was multiple authors.
Actually, there are authors of the books of the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you do know who wrote them.
It depends on the books. For example, the Gospels, we do not know who wrote them. Now, it says Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John on the books. But the fact is, the text, the Greek text that they have that was originally written, did not have that as a title, did not have any identification from the writers as to who was writing it. Those names were added later on, a couple centuries later, by different early Christian fathers in order to try to give the books credibility. And not just to give it credibility, to be fair, some of them probably really did believe, perhaps, or come up with the idea, well, this must have been written by someone close to Jesus. And in the case of the letters by Paul, about half of them, because there's 13, so it's not necessarily half, about half of those are contested by biblical scholars who study the Greek texts. About half of them are considered not to have been written by Paul. There's a lot of debate on it, but certain books that claim to be written by Paul, they're fairly certain were not. The books of 1st and 2nd Peter are considered not to be written by him either. Does that make sense?
Well, okay. So where do the stories come from if there's no authors?
Oh, there are authors. It's just that they're not they're not the people whose names are written above them in the case of the Gospel.
So there are authors. You just said that there's not any. I'm confused.
Oh, no. There are authors. Someone wrote the Gospel of Matthew. Someone wrote the Gospel of Mark, Luke, and John. But they were not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is what we're saying. That there's no reason, or not necessarily it wasn't, but that we don't have any reason to conclude they were the ones, and that the names were attached to the works much later.
Okay.
Right, so they had authors.
Question. The last gentleman brought up abortion.
Yeah.
And I was concerned about her answer with abortion, saying that, being against it, saying that you cannot, or that, you can kill somebody because it is somebody going inside of you, correct?
The question of personhood is what matters, but I'll let her address that since it's her argument.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, I don't really think it's some body, because up until, say, about 26, 29 weeks, there is no nervous system. It can't feel pain. It can't think. It has gills. There are no eyes. I just don't believe that counts as a person.
Personhood, typically, it's a matter of, have you developed as a person? Have you become a person? It's really a question of what we mean by person. For me, I have a personality. It's based on how I interact with things. when we're talking about, a fetus or, the cells growing within a woman's womb at the earliest stages, it has not yet developed personality. It does not yet have thoughts, as she also pointed out. It does, in the earliest stages, it doesn't even feel pain or pleasure. So...
Well, if it doesn't have, like, a personality, if it cannot speak, stuff like that, what about, how do you explain the people that are deaf or are deaf and dumb, that they cannot speak or hear, or, they're autistic people? How do you describe things like that?
Well, they're different. In the case of autistic people, they actually do have personalities. They, in a lot of cases, can speak. They can communicate. They are functioning...
People that cannot verbally respond to you. How do you describe that?
They have a fully developed brain.
And a nervous system. They can feel pain, they can feel pleasure. So doing harm to them, actually does have more meaning than when you...
They can be happy, they can be sad.
Right, they can also experience
emotion. Going back to the fetus, they can, by the 9th week, they have developed. They're developing the nervous system, so...
But they don't have it.
Can feel pain. So that would be considered murder.
No, pain and murder are not the same thing. If I were to pinch Rachel and I cause her pain, that is not murder for the record. But
they are developing the nervous system, but...
They have lungs, they're developing a brain.
Okay, at what week did you say this?
She said 9 weeks is when they're developing.
Well, but at 9 weeks, it's developing the nervous system, and I don't know how much you know about, say, the human nervous system. They might have, some nerve cells, but there is no brain to connect it to. The nerves aren't actually demyelinated, which means that if you, say, touch it on the toe or nose, the signal's not getting anywhere.
So it's not really feeling. It is developing, but it is not formed enough that you can feel things. Or that it could feel things, I should say. Does that make sense?
I guess in your perspective. Okay, well, I'm done with my questions, so have a nice day.
All right, thank you very much. Please feel free to call again. All right. Let's see.
Well, should we get back to the news, or should we continue on the topic?
Well, I suppose we could go ahead and continue on the topic.
Okay.
So yes, our topic, in case you may have missed it... Oh, hold on one moment. Okay. All right. But the topic is when Christians often argue with people who are not Christians, they tend to offer an argument that people like the apostles or Jesus or Paul or any other person who's been martyred, the saints, suffered and died at the hands of persecutors. And they challenge us to explain why they would have done that instead of just, giving it up. Why would they have lived according to a lie?
Or they died for it, therefore it must be true.
Right, which is generally the way their logic goes.
And there are several books on the subject. I remember as a kid, the Jesus Freaks books were very popular with all these stories of martyrs and what all they did. Therefore, what they believed must be true.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing those books, and I've also heard of other people talking about... Oh, we have a call? Okay. We have another call. Hello? Caller?
Yes.
Hi. Could we get a name or nickname?
My name is Dale.
Sorry, couldn't catch it?
Pardon?
What was your name again?
Dale.
Dale. Hello.
Yes.
Hi.
Am I talking to you now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so what I would like to sort of put to you guys is that when I was a young man, I stood exactly in your shoes where you are now. And there are 3 points I would like to make to you.
Okay.
First, I would pose the possibility to you that what you're doing now in your pontification and your beliefs and all is I would like to put you to the thought that possibly atheism could be construed The second point I would like to make is that if you look upon life as a system of atrophy and entropy, and consider all the cycles of mankind,
Okay.
carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, blah, 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 global warming, whatever,
Yeah.
the existence of mankind, to me, would seem as if one had taken a box of marbles,
Okay.
set them down, and turned them over, and jerked the lid off, and we're still here. And I would just like to put to you guys that, the possibility of a creator could be more than you think.
Okay. Is that
Let's have a good day.
is that 2 or have you gotten to 3 yet?
That's 3.
Okay, so number 1, the possibility atheism is a religion. Number 2, considering entropy and so forth, how unlikely it is we exist.
Yes.
Number 3, you're saying that there's a likelihood there's a creator.
There seems to be a likelihood of a creator because the natural condition of entropy existing in the world of atrophy.
Okay, why would entropy be a problem?
I know what he's talking about, I think.
I think I might too, but I'd like to let him...
Why would entropy be a problem? Entropy is not a problem. Entropy is the solution, my friend. Everything is based on decay and corruption. Like I was spouting in my rant, if you consider the nitrogen cycle, the carbon cycle, global warming, yada, yada, yada,
Okay.
condition of the earth, pollution of the atmosphere,
Okay.
whatever you want to talk about.
Okay.
It all comes down to a point that that existence seems to be a terminal condition.
Well, maybe. The universe is certainly going to come to an end. There's disagreement as to exactly how, but it will be. Our species will not always last, sure. So how does that have to do with there being a creator?
I think, my opinion is, sure, in a universe where entropy exists, yes, humans are very complicated, and, and some creatures are getting more complicated over time. But you see, entropy, humans are creating more entropy. I mean, we cause more waste. It's not like we live in a closed system. I mean, there's a world around us, and that's why we're so complicated, but we're causing, by, inhaling, exhaling, digesting food, we are creating more entropy.
And there's also, I can't remember exactly where I read this, but it was...
Could I give you one final question, and then I'll depart?
Okay, if you'd like.
One final question. How can you not believe in a creator as we sit here now, plain creator, talk as if we had all answers? And I wish you guys a good evening.
All right, take care. I cannot believe in a creator because I have not seen any evidence that one exists. To posit that one exists means you have to demonstrate that it exists. You have to have evidence to show that it does exist. And if you're going to posit a specific God, you then have to, after showing that there is a God or creator, you would then have to attach it, you'd have to connect it to it with more evidence.
Well, I'm happy for people who, feel fulfilled in their lives thinking that there is a creator, as long as they aren't hurting anybody else by justifying hurting other people with their beliefs. It's just I personally can't.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Dale. We did appreciate you calling in and asking us questions and offering points. And I don't think we addressed your first point. You said the possibility atheism is a religion. Certain people can treat it that way. Atheists and theists alike can treat it that way. For me, it is not. I think it depends on how people use it.
I mean, I know there are Christians and other people who think it's ridiculous. Like, well, if you don't believe in something, how can there be a movement for something you don't believe in? And how would you respond to that?
How would I respond to that?
Yeah.
You can't have a movement for something you don't believe in? I'd say it's almost a necessary type of thing. Some would say it's a necessary evil, but I don't think it's necessarily evil. I think, just because... I'd say it's because we have such a large amount of people in the world and in history who do believe in creators, creative beings, that are cosmic, or whatever term you'd like to apply, that are generally described as gods, goddesses. And because of that large number of people, there are those of us who don't believe it. And so there's been a term I think, originally applied by the Romans to the Christians, atheists, in order to describe someone who doesn't believe it. So, in a way, it was used, it's originally a term, I guess, to set apart a group as, troublesome or opposed to the norm. And simply, those of us who really don't believe in gods have, been saddled with it and also taken it up upon ourselves, and simply acknowledging, we don't believe in that. And so we have to, in a sense, exist within that kind of social group and identity. So.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. And we have another call. Hello, caller.
Hi, this is Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, I've called in before, so...
Okay, welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Now, I kind of missed your last little comment because I had to mute the TV, but...
Okay.
Now, you promised that you want to believe in God and need evidence. Is that right?
Yes.
You need evidence and God.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you talked about, when Christians die for a lie, is a piece of the evidence. It's not false. The reason being is that what I've always understood that to mean is I knew something was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And I would probably most likely give my life for something that I knew was a lie.
Okay.
And we apply that to the apostles, and all the people that died at that time period.
Okay.
Or the Christianity. If what they believed was a lie, the odds of them dying for that is actually a little bit high. Now, would people die for something that is a lie? Well, it depends on if they believe it's a lie.
Right, I fully agree.
If they believe it's a lie, then I would very less likely believe that they would die for it. But if they don't know that it's a lie,
right,
then they might die for it, because people probably do that all the time.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the fact that people would die for a lie, when somebody died for a lie, is a piece of the evidence, not the whole evidence.
I don't see why it would be a piece of evidence. Could you?
Well, it's like a case, in forensic science, when they, like in a cold case situation, they don't base all the whole case on one piece.
I agree.
Just a piece of the evidence. To me, there is evidence of God's existence.
Okay.
The moral argument, the logical argument, the cosmological argument, the fact of the Scripture itself. Like I was asking you, how your source documents or your source claiming that you don't think that Luke, Mark, Matthew, and John, all those were written by those authors.
Right.
Where'd you get your information?
Well, I get my information, from various biblical scholars who have admitted as much. For example, Bart Ehrman, Elaine Pagels. I'm trying to think. Burton Mack was his name. There's another one. Several different biblical scholars. Also, it was a point that was brought up to me. I attended a Bible college for a couple of years. That was a point we knew about there. That it was in contest. That the original text, or at least the closest to the original text we have, do not have names attached to them.
Well, because I've also read scholars, I can't throw it off the top of my head, that have said that tradition, a lot of people hold, scholars hold, that those words...
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing what you're saying. You're breaking up a little bit. Could you say that again?
I'm sorry, so that I've also read, right off the top of my head here, but that these are scholars that also do believe that these books are written by these authors. So, I mean, why should I trust your source documents over the sources that I have? Why should I trust yours over what I know?
I'm not saying you have to, but...
Can I ask you something? Do you believe that Zeus and Athena exist?
I'm sorry, I can barely understand her. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Do you believe that Zeus and Athena exist? The Greek pantheon?
No, I do not.
Then where did the myths come from?
Where did the myth come from?
Yes, there's many stories written down.
I'm not gonna enough story on those understanding of how the myth arose.
Well, but you're asking us where this came from.
I'm talking about his information on where he got saying that these documents were written.
Well, can you prove that these myths are false?
Excuse me, I'm sorry?
Can you, what?
You're good.
I can barely understand you. I'm sorry.
if these myths are false, where did they come from? Can you prove that they aren't false? I mean, look at all the stuff the Greek people did. They built these temples. Certainly, they believed that they were true. If they didn't think they were true, then why would they, use all that manpower to worship their gods?
Well, I think that, to me, the biblical evidence for the Gospels weighs a lot heavier, but it's true, and the manuscripts talking about Zeus and all those characters.
Okay. You went through a list of arguments before: moral, ontological, cosmological, and the scriptures.
Theological, and the scriptures is
theological. Okay. I've listened to people present those arguments. I've listened to people take those arguments apart in various forms, because there's different forms of the arguments. I don't find any of them convincing. With regard to the scriptures, I still continue to read books all the time about the study of the biblical passages and scriptures and so forth, their development, the social structure back then. I do not find the scriptures persuasive.
So what would they persuade? So what evidence of God or God's existence would you be looking for?
That's not my place to say. I'd say that's the place of the claimant, the one claiming there is one. You would have to show me what evidence you have. And if that evidence doesn't pass muster, then I'm sorry, I can't believe it.
Okay, so if I witnessed a miracle, or there was a miracle happen, and I say that's evidence of God.
Okay.
And you would either I'm telling the truth or I'm not.
Well, it's not so much that. If you witness something, suppose you actually do witness something, and then you come and tell me you saw this thing happen, I would, depending on what you're claiming, I may not be able to believe you. I may simply be incapable of doing it based on how I understand the world to work. If you can... No, you're all right. Go ahead. I think I got your
The point is, and the only reason I say that is, in an atheistic perspective, or as I understand it, that you're not open to anything outside of nature itself or natural law. Give yourself awareness of anything beyond the natural world.
I'm not sure what is beyond the natural. Let's put it that way. I don't to even speak of anything beyond the natural. You would have to first show me that, or give me an idea of how that is known.
Okay, the law of non-contradiction. Now that's something that's done within logic. That's something that can't be proven scientifically, and it's something that can't be expressed. It's not a physical thing that I can't grasp hold of.
The law of non-contradiction, though, is simply what we have observed.
Right, but it's our reason that does it. It's something that's right. We observe things, right, but that's something that you can't prove. You can't prove the law of contradiction scientifically. It's an idea that exists. How we reason and understand the world.
I don't know. You could. I don't know. If you have this statement where you say that you cannot have two things contradicting one another, if you could then show that could happen, I'd say you could scientifically prove it to be not the case. In all cases.
If it's something that's supernatural, maybe only one time of being.
Say again.
But maybe if it's a supernatural event, then you can't replicate. Science requires replication, which means I've got to be able to observe it, replicate it, do it again.
So then you'd have to show me a different way. You'd have to show me a different way of reliably knowing that it's true. If it's something that occurs only one time, then you would have to find another way, or you'd have to find a way to replicate it.
So what if you had witnesses of people of some event? Would that not be...
If you have witnesses?
Yes.
If you have witnesses, then you have a lot of people making claims, and then you'd have to see what they each are claiming. If what they say all lines up together, then you have a very strong claim that you'd have to really wonder, okay, did something happen? If so, what was it? And it'd be a mystery until we could figure it out. What happened, because there's cases of mass hallucination, personal hallucination. It may have been it could have been a magician trick. We don't know. It depends on what the thing is, really.
Yeah, and then there are some cases where people say that they saw the skies rain blood.
Oh yeah.
And you know what? They actually did see something. It just wasn't what they thought it was.
I also remember seeing an article. There was an entire city in Europe that I'm sorry, I can't really do good citation for sourcing this, but that the entire populace of the city thought the sun disappeared from the sky, and it's just like, how do you have that? So,
well, see, that's the thing about claim about what Christians die for a lie. There's 12 people. If the documents are reliable, historical reliable documents, the biblical record is, if it is.
If it were.
Yeah. We can get into discussion. I'm talking about the issue they're talking about.
Right.
If 120 people, 500 people saw Jesus risen from the dead, saw him risen, and in a sense died for that belief.
Yeah.
That's a powerful argument.
It's not powerful.
Well, it is powerful.
Because the reason it can't be powerful is because you have
you don't have 500 written statements saying that I saw this, or like I was walking my goat and then I saw this person rise into the sky.
Right. In fact, we don't have any written testimony of people who actually claim to have seen it themselves. The 4 Gospels we have, none of the anonymous authors claim to have seen the event itself. So we have no written testimony.
Paul's document is correct.
Paul did not claim to see Jesus raised from the dead, is what I'm saying. He claims to have visions, and I've heard argumentation about the words he used in the Greek, that it may simply mean vision and not actually an actual person. So Paul's not a good example, I would say.
Okay, then what about Peter? Peter saw.
We do not have written text from Peter. 1st and 2nd Peter are generally taken to be forgeries. Like, they're written under the... And by forgeries, I don't mean that they're... that they're necessarily trying to deceive people, but that they are writing under the name of Peter, but they're not written by Peter, that they were written too late for Peter to have written them.
I'd just like to see the source information for that.
Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman, he wrote the book Forged, he wrote the book Jesus Interrupted, and I think those are the 2 books that I know that they are mentioned in. There's also Who Wrote the New Testament, The Making of Christian Myth by Burton Mack. I think maybe, I don't think I've read anything by Elaine Pagels that's actually discussed that.
What about some of the other Christian scholars? Is there any other might believe the same thing?
Are there what, sorry?
Is there any other Christian scholars besides those that believe the same thing? Because I know there's...
I think I haven't gotten to read the works yet, but I think Richard Carrier, perhaps. I'm still trying to find a lot more scholars to read, and I've got other books at home I haven't even read yet. So.
The ones that claim that these authors actually wrote these books, you read the books as well.
Have I read? Sorry, it's hard to understand all the time. Are you asking me if I've read books by people who say they are written by these people?
Yes.
No, because I've yet to read anyone who has tried to make that claim, or make that case, I should say.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think there's authors out there that do. I mean, I don't have any off the top of my head because I've been in seminary myself, and I read the books I've read actually stated the authors those things.
Okay.
So I mean, we're kind of contradicting each other because of what information I've read.
Yeah.
And the information you read, so obviously can't be right. So either I'm right or wrong, or you're right or wrong. So.
Right, and it's really hard to figure out simply in this way.
Right. Well, that's why I just wanted to speak. That's why I said if the biblical text is an accurate historical document,
if it were,
that statement would make sense.
Well,
that would make Christians would not for a while.
We also run into the issue that the different Gospels have different lists of who did what, who was among the 12, and we have a text from Paul where he lists a woman and her husband as foremost among the apostles. So we don't really know exactly, I would say, who the 12 were, if they actually existed. We don't know that they existed, to be fair.
That's something I know we keep doing here, trying to talk about that. I mean, we can actually have to look at the scripture text itself and walk through that process. But and I'm saying that I think that statement can be true if the biblical text is true.
It would be an if the biblical text were known to be true, I don't think that argument would even be necessary.
Well, why is that?
Well, if the biblical accounts were acceptable as true, you wouldn't have to argue that they wouldn't die for a lie, because it would already be accepted as true that Jesus died and that all that happened. That's what I'm saying. Is that's the conclusion that that a lot of people try to reach in making the argument. If you have that conclusion already, you don't even have to make the argument.
Right, but it's a piece of the equation, though. Because I mean, if the documents are then they die for life. It's the events of Jesus' death and resurrection.
I understand. But the thing is, if we do, as Rachel and I do not, if you do not already accept that the Bible is accurate, then that argument is not going to get you anywhere. And the point of the argument, as I've mentioned before, is in order to get to the conclusion that the Bible is accurate and trustworthy.
Well, that's another discussion for another time. So, I mean, I'm saying the argument is valid if the text is true. Now, I want to get into whether we can't cover that, obviously, in the next 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, we don't even have that much time.
Right. So anyway, but I mean, I think the argument is valid. That's all I wanted to say. I think it's valid if the biblical text is true.
If you're already accepting it, right? But that means but that's the point. If you're making the argument to another Christian who accepts the Bible, yes. If you're making the argument to someone who is not a Christian, it's not a valid argument. That's what I would say. There's a lot of the Christian apologetics I've heard are very convincing to people who already accept the conclusion it's aiming at, and a lot of times they'll admit that, even the apologists. But if it's being aimed at someone who does not accept the conclusion that the Bible is trustworthy or that it is accurate, that's where we're going to have a problem. Then it's not going to be valid for me if it relies on that assumption.
Well, I agree. I mean, if you don't believe the Bible's true, me using this argument would not work. I agree with you.
Exactly. Paul, we do have to let you go because we've got to start wrapping up. I thank you for calling, and would like to invite you to the Barley's meetup tonight if you are interested in joining us. We could discuss it more there.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Oh.
Yeah, and everybody's welcome to come to the meetup to talk, as long as you aren't coming over there to preach, proselytize, or punch.
Or provoke, yes. Indeed. Let's see.
And it's funny how many religions say that they're the one true religion.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, we have someone wanting to make a quick statement. Hello, caller?
Hi, yes. My name is Elena, and Rachel, this is Flip Hop's mom.
Hi.
Hi, this is Mr. Hop's mom.
Nice to hear you. We were joking about the...
and let us know she was going to be on the show tonight on another forum that we're on the computer, and I told her I'd listen, and I so almost got that call in before the last caller, but I was like, no, we're running out of time, but I did want to make sure that I said hello.
Well, thanks. It's nice to know that somebody on the internet's listening to me.
Well, thank you for having this show, and I'm like you, I'm an atheist, so run for the team.
All right.
You're welcome to call back next week or any other time.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Have a great day.
You too.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.
Before the show, we were actually joking about that.
About someone calling in or watching from that
Okay,
forum.
so, well, it's time to wrap up the show.
So get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
Please send us feedback. Leave a voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
You can see this show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station and at 2200 Greenwich, thank you, meantime, at ctvknox.org.
We would like to send our thanks to Sam and Forrest for technical support and to the staff at CTV Knox and to all